You know that classic story about the chosen teenager destined to save the world? The one you see in almost every Japanese anime? It's a tried and true formula, and hey, it works. But let's be honest, reality hits hard, and most of us relate way more to someone who's already taken a few punches from life. That's where Kaiju number 8 shines. In a world ravaged by giant Godzilla-style monsters, the hero isn't some prodigious teen from a top-tier military squad. It's Kafka, a 32-year-old guy who gave up on his dreams and now works cleaning up the grotesque mess left behind after monster battles. Basically, he's the janitor of the apocalypse. But don't let the premise fool you. It's not just for laughs. The series delivers blockbuster-level action scenes, paired with razor-sharp humor that hits just right. What really makes it stand out, though, is its core message. Even when you feel like a total failure, life might still throw you a second chance, even if that means turning into a superpowered freak. So today, we dive into the journey of this unlikely hero, a dude in his 30s proving it's never too late to flip the script, even if you have to swallow a few monsters along the way. In a world where Japan serves as a punching bag for giant monsters called Kaiju, the Defense Force's 3rd Division nukes a generic Godzilla led by the glorious Captain Mina. While the elite reaps the fame, the monster sweeper team arrives to deal with the post-battle nastiness, including our protagonist Kafka, a washed-up 32-year-old who gave up on his dreams to become a specialist in dissecting monster poop and guts. Kafka is tasked with babysitting the rookie Reino, an ambitious young man who looks at him with the same judgment you get at family gatherings for still living in your parents' basement. At first, Reino treats the protagonist like a settled loser, but after spending the day neck-deep in long, thick intestines filled with questionable bodily fluids, the kid realizes Kafka takes the job seriously. He then reveals that the enlistment age limit has been raised to 33, giving our monster janitor one last chance to stop being a failure and fulfill his promise to stand by Mina's side. But the universe loves a joke, and a residual kaiju sprouts from the corpse looking for a snack.
That wasn't me trying to
Kafka tells the kid to run and tries to fight the beast with cleaning supplies, but obviously gets beaten worse than a cheap steak being tenderized. Before he becomes fertilizer, Mina shows up with her giant cannon and vaporizes the threat, proving that the abyss between them is wider than his self-esteem. Later in the hospital, while the two recover in pure bro mode, a flying mini kaiju appears and decides Kafka's open mouth is free real estate. The creature forces its way down his throat in a scene that would make any adult film professional blush, and Kafka undergoes a bizarre metamorphosis, turning into a buff humanoid monster. Reino panics seeing his senpai has become the enemy, and to make matters worse, an old snitch in the next bed sees everything and starts screaming, forcing the duo to flee the hospital before Kafka's first mission becomes getting exterminated by his own crush. While hiding in the city sewers like unemployed ninja turtles, they see a monster attacking a mother and daughter. Kafka, forgetting he is now a wanted abomination, decides to play hero and unleashes a punch so absurd it disintegrates the enemy instantly. Proving he's finally good for something other than cleaning guts. The brat thanks the nice kaiju, leaving Mina totally confused, staring at the mortal remains of ground beef left on the street. 3 months pass, and Kafka is now a wanted celebrity named Kaiju number 8, but he keeps working his trash job while dodging the police. The exam results come out, and while Reino passes easily because he's not a failure, Kafka is shocked to discover he also passed the screening, probably out of pity from the evaluators. They rush to the Tachikawa base for the second phase, but in the parking lot they bump into Kikoru Shinomiya, a tiny blonde prodigy with a superiority complex. To show who's boss, she simply flips their company car with her bare hands as if it were styrofoam, before letting Kafka know he reeks of monster, which, let's be honest, must be an improvement over his natural loser smell. During the physical test, Kafka discovers his 30-year-old body is already begging for retirement benefits, finishing in last place while Kikoru and Genzi humiliate him in the race. Reino tries to console him, saying it was noble not to cheat using superpowers, but we all know moral victories don't put food on the table. Inside the base, Mina and Vice Captain Hoshina, a guy guy with a treacherous fox face watched the recruits put on suits made of kaiju muscle, basically wearing the enemy's skin tied against their bodies. Kiko-Ru unleashes 46% of the suit's power, an absurd record, while Kafka manages the legendary feat of unleashing absolutely 0%. His suit is basically an expensive paperweight, proving his performance is null regardless of the gear, and Hoshi now laughs in his face because someone else's misery is the best comedy. In a simulated battlefield, Kiko-Ru goes around soloing the entire map, turning monsters into dust before the others can blink.
Yoju, 1-2, down!
Kafka, heavy and useless just like you on a Monday, uses his vast knowledge of cleaning monster innards to tell Reino exactly where to stick the gun to kill the beast. But then a surprise kaiju shows up and breaks Kafka's leg like it's a toothpick. The system wants to pull him from the game so he doesn't die, but he gets up on the pure strength of his platonic love for Mina. Of course, he doesn't do anything useful. Kiko-Ru is the one who resolves it, pulverizing the monster and calling him trash. Kafka, with his leg dangling and his pride wounded, decides to keep crawling because giving up now would be admitting he's a complete failure. Even with a leg looking like a badly folded origami, Kafka refuses to quit, forcing Reino to carry this dead weight on his back, proving that true friendship involves lugging a sweaty old dude straight into danger. Meanwhile, Kiko-Ru, fueled purely by a worrying amount of daddy issues and a pathological need to be perfect for daddy, destroys the main monster's core just as the duo of uselessness arrives to watch. The exam is declared complete, but a poor man's joy is short-lived when a mysterious humanoid kaiju sprouts from nowhere, decides Kiko-Ru needs extra ventilation in her chest, and shoots her. As if being a jerk wasn't enough, the creature plays necromancer, reviving the defeated monsters and injecting them with steroids before vanishing into the chaos. With the site looking like a post-apocalyptic pigsty, the buff monster prepares a death ray to vaporize the wounded tsundere. Just when she accepts she's a goner, Kafka decides to stop being a burden and assumes his full kaiju form. He steps in front of the attack like it's a breeze and registering an absurd fortitude of 9.8 that makes the Defense Force computers blink like a Christmas tree, disintegrates the enemy with a single punch. After stroking Kiko-Ru's ego by saying she did a good job, Kafka reverts to his pathetic human form and throws himself on the ground playing dumb alongside Reino so the rescue team won't suspect a thing. Later at the hospital while recovering, Mina walks into his room, thanking him for helping out in the fight. Induction day arrives, and the prodigy Kiko-Ru is there shining brighter than a greased bald head. But Kafka interrupts the ceremony to reveal he failed miserably with 0% aptitude, proving to be less useful than an umbrella in a hurricane. However, Vice Captain Hoshina, wearing the smile of someone stealing lunch money, accepts Kafka as a probationary cadet, claiming he needs a class clown. But in reality, Hoshina noticed Kafka's vital signs vanish during the exam and wants to keep this weirdo close to watch him, just like a crazy stalker ex.
There's something off about you, and I don't mean your 0% suit aptitude. So I'm gonna keep you real close, till I figure out what that is.
Training begins, and the second-hand embarrassment is palpable. While recruits like Reino and Iharu become killing machines, Kafka remains stuck at 1% power, getting beaten worse than cheap meat at a budget barbecue. In the mandatory male fan service moment in the bathhouse, the recruits scrub their swords and discuss motivations. Reino confesses he's a simp for Captain Mina, but Kafka shocks the entire locker room by revealing he and Mina are childhood friends who promised to enlist together, probably between one game of playing doctor and another. Later, Hoshina finds the protagonist pretending to study and gives him a loving ultimatum. He has 3 months to prove he's good for something other than a paperweight, or he gets kicked off the force. The episode closes with the squad heading out for their first real operation to see who dies first. An emergency alert collapses in Sagamihara because a giant mushroom kaiju decided to sprout in the Kanawa fault line. While the army preps the artillery, the defense force sends Captain Mina to the best camping spot to secure the main frag, dumping the responsibility of cleaning up the mess on Vice Captain Hoshina's squad, where our geriatric protagonist and the rest of the noobs are stuck babysitting the rear. The operation begins, and the little psychopath Kiko-Ru decides that listening to orders is for weaklings, so she rushes forward and blows up a Yoju with excessive firepower, leaving the veterans looking like idiots. While Kafka has the physical conditioning of an 80-year-old smoker and can barely keep up, he decides to use the only thing he's good at, digging through trash. He cuts open a monster corpse and discovers discovers a hidden core along with a reproductive organ that ejects offspring. He yells this info to Hoshina, teaching the entire squad to aim for the monster's balls to stop reproduction, which is efficient to say the least. With the giant mushroom immobilized, Mina unleashes 96% power and whips out a colossal cannon that definitely compensates for something, obliterating the target with the delicacy of a tactical nuke. Kafka stands there drooling, realizing his childhood friend is in an unreachable league, but the celebration is cut short because the monster's remains explode in an of secondary spawns. Hoshina draws his blades to slice monster sashimi.
I'd say I've got the edge on her.
But amidst the chaos, Reino and Iharu bump into an intellectual humanoid kaiju who decided to have a chat before trying to massacre them. The evil mushroom raises a barrier to cut the Wi-Fi signal and starts firing projectiles at them like it's an FPS tutorial. Iharu gets wounded almost instantly, which triggers an existential crisis about being inferior to Reino's absurd growth. The Ice Boy tries to hold the line with freezing ammo, but the ammo runs out, and Iharu, instead of fleeing like anyone with a brain, decides to stay there bleeding to provide moral support. Number 9 plays with his food and impales Reino while analyzing human weapons, but just as he's about to execute the two useless cadets, Kafka arrives transformed, flying on pure rage. Enraged at seeing his boys humiliated, Kafka takes over the fight with sheer brutality, shattering the alien's defenses and finishing him off with a single punch, one that might even make a certain bald hero reconsider his career. But before he can crush the exposed core, Defense Force officers arrive to ruin the party. Distracted trying to hide his secret identity, Kafka slips up and gives Number 9 the chance to shed his skin, dissolving and vanishing into thin air. The protagonist tries to get out of there but is intercepted by Hoshina, who senses the monster's aura. Vice Captain Hoshina decides to turn Kaiju Number 8 into luxury sashimi, activating turbo mode and unleashing invisible cuts that ignore Kafka's hard skin.
Can't harden my body fast enough to defend myself from these attacks!
But our protagonist, being the sentimental monster he is, refuses to strike back with lethal force. He catches Hoshina's blade with his bare hands, breaks the vice captain's toy to create an opening, and flees into the night like his dad went out for cigarettes. Hoshina is left behind, sweaty and confused, realizing that thing fights with the mercy of a soft-hearted human. Meanwhile, the humanoid mushroom known as Kaiju Number 9 kills a random driver and steals his skin to blend into society, swearing revenge. Back in his pathetic human form, Kafka reunites with Kikoru and runs to the hospital. The group decides to gaslight Iharu, convincing the poor guy that it was Reino who saved the day, all to protect the protagonist's little secret. To celebrate the fact that they are still breathing, the platoon goes to dinner at a fancy restaurant paid for by Izumo's family. During the party, Hoshina announces that Kafka has been promoted from useless cadet to full officer. The reason for the promotion? His brilliant tactical advice on where to find the kaiju's reproductive organs? Yes, he moved up in the world because he knows exactly where the monster's balls are. Later, Kafka stumbles upon Hoshina obsessively training in the dark, swinging what's left of his dignity. The vice captain admits he felt like a failure and is mentally simulating how he's going to decapitate Number 8 next time, making Kafka sweat cold with terror. The next day, Captain Mina confirms the promotion and, before leaving, reveals she actually remembers their childhood promise. Kafka's heart races so fast he forgets the hierarchy and acts way too familiar, earning a punishment of infinite push-ups, but celebrating his first real step toward finally standing beside his heavily armed waifu. Vice Captain Hoshina is stuck in the office doing unpaid overtime, reflecting on how kaijus are getting smarter, probably smarter than half the cast of this anime. But his peace as a civil servant ends when the Tachikawa base receives an express delivery of destruction from the sky. A swarm of biological pterodactyls begins a coordinated bombing run, and since Captain Mina decided to take a day off right at the apocalypse, it falls on Hoshina to take the heat and try to organize the defense against this flock from hell. He runs to the front line and runs into the leader, a buff red kaiju who learned to speak just to demand a brawl with the strongest human in the area, while Hoshina tries to compensate for his height with extreme violence. The rest of the defense force discovers that shooting the beast's frontal armor is as useful as honking in a traffic jam. That's when our geriatric protagonist Kafka uses his boomer brain to realize the obvious. To fly, the monsters need to have light, unprotected rears. He yells for the squad to stop being idiots and focus on attacking from behind, a tactic that usually works very well if you know where to stick the bullet. When desperation comes knocking, Kikoru Shinomiya drops from the sky carrying a custom axe bigger than her ego, turning a kaiju into instant pate. She teams up with Reino in a strategy where she acts as tasty bait to draw attention while snipers hammer the enemy's exposed rears. Back in the main duel, Hoshina has activated blender mode and slices the red kaiju like a sushi chef on a rampage. But because no villain respects the rule of dying on the first try, the creature reveals it moved its vital core, a dirty cheat worthy of a kid losing at a video game. The beast then decides that size does matter, evolving into a superheated giant that takes up the entire server, forcing Hoshina to face the boss's second phase. While his stamina bar is already screaming for help, while he struggles to find a hole to penetrate, his mind drifts to a cliche flashback where his dad and brother say swords are as useful as an ashtray on a motorbike. But he remembers Captain Mina recruited him specifically to be the luxury garbage man who clears the path for her to shine. Motivated by the absolute power of simping, Hoshina fries his suit's processor beyond the limit and unleashes a desperate combo to create an opening. He gets beaten worse than you during a pop quiz and almost dies, but Mina arrives at the last second with her cannon, which would compensate for any size complex. Hoshina uses the rest of his stamina to slice the beast's back, exposing the core for Mina to finish off with a devastating shot.
Just slice and slice!
The body falls, but number 10's head, more persistent than an ex-boyfriend, calls a flock of monsters to fuse into a biological bomb capable of sending the whole base back to the lobby. With no time to think and seeing all his friends about to turn into barbecue, Kafka decides to commit social suicide. He transforms it to Kaiju number 8 right in front of the entire division, shocking everyone with his monstrous ugliness, then leaps into the sky and lands a punch, detonating the bomb mid-dash air dot. The dust settles, and as a reward for saving everyone's life, Mina points her gun at his face and declares him a hostile target. Kafka realizes the jig is up, surrenders without a fight, and apologizes to Hoshina while being handcuffed, proving that no good deed goes unpunished in this anime. The boomers in the Defense Force leadership organize a bingo night to decide how to dismember Kaiju number 8, with the majority agreeing that turning his body into designer handbags is the best option for the budget. Director General Isao Shinomiya, aka Father of the Year, slams the gavel and demands the 3rd Division hand over Kafka so he can play mad scientist. Meanwhile, a protagonist is whining in his cell, thinking his dream went down the drain and he'll never stand by Mina's side again. She shows up looking like she sucked on a lemon in front of the guards, but whispers in his ear that she doesn't see him as an enemy and is compiling a dossier to prove he's human, probably showing evidence that he cries watching soap operas. As Kafka is dragged out like an expelled reality show contestant, the 3rd Division gives a dramatic salute, and Reino shouts vows of eternal loyalty, proving that bromance is the only unbreakable thing in this anime. But a poor man's joy is short-lived, as they announce the squad will be dissolved and everyone will be scattered around the world, so no one tries to save the old man from the grill. Kikoru tries to appeal to Papa Isao's frozen heart by showing medical exams proving Kafka has a human heart, but the old man couldn't care less about medicine, throws the dead mom card on the table, and tells his daughter to stop crying. Over at the maritime base, Isao orders Kafka's handcuffs removed just for the pleasure of shooting him immediately after. When Kafka uses his thick skin to avoid turning into Swiss cheese, the old man points and yells that this is proof he's a monster. Impeccable logic. Isao activates weapon number 2, wearing the corpse of a buff-dye kaiju to brawl. Kafka tries to tank the beating by only hardening specific body parts to prove he's civilized, but he gets beaten worse than luggage at an airport. With his body wrecked and survival instincts blaring, a voice in his head orders him to kill everything that moves. The protagonist loses control of his bladder and his consciousness, assumes the full Kaiju number 8 form, and goes after his big daddy-in-law with blood in his eyes, shattering Kikoru's hopes of having a little monster boyfriend. Reino and Iharu are killing themselves training at the base, with Reino desperate to get strong enough to protect Kafka in the future, because apparently being the damsel in distress doesn't fit his shonen protagonist vibe. Meanwhile, Captain Mina is summoned to HQ to watch from the VIP box as Director General Issa Shinomiya performs a combative physical exam on our hero Kaiju. But Kafka's body can't handle the pressure, and the Kaiju instinct takes the wheel, turning him into a killing machine that regenerates faster than a cancelled influencer's self-esteem. The monster humiliates the director with brute force and charges an energy blast that would send the old man straight to the retirement home in the afterlife. But Kafka's consciousness fights to come back because the only thing he fears more than death is making Mina cry again. In an act of post-freakout clarity, he regains control and punches his own chest to smash the core, stopping the fatal blow and proving he'd rather tear himself apart than hurt a human. At the council meeting, the military geriatrics demand Kafka be discarded like radioactive waste, but Mina defends her favorite pet tooth and nail. Isao, who saw the heroic self-mutilation up close, tells everyone to shut up and decides to keep Kafka alive as the defense force's pet weapon instead of turning him into bags and shoes. Kafka wakes up in the hospital being told he's still on a short leash, while the 3rd Division pops champagne for his return. But of course, to ruin the party, Kaiju number 9 is in the shadows watching everything like a creepy stalker, just waiting for the right time to turn this comedy into a tragedy again. After a classic depressive flashback where we see Kafka and Mina as kids swearing they'd commit genocide against monsters, we jump back to the present right in the middle of a nightmare, where Kafka, transformed into Kaiju number 8, tries to escape, but ends up caught because stealth isn't the strong suit of a buff lizard. While the old suits debate whether to turn the protagonist into barbecue, rookies Reino and Iharu are shipped off to the 4th Division, blindly trusting that Kafka will return. Pure delusion. Kikoru is thrown into the 1st Division, the elite of the elite, but what she finds is Captain Gen Narumi, who is basically her mirror image, an addicted gamer living in a pigsty surrounded by trash. The guy seems more worried about his game ranking than national security, leaving the girl in shock. But when a colossal kaiju decides to go sightseeing in Tokyo Bay and interrupts his gameplay, the bum's posture changes instantly. The 1st Division arrives on the scene with enough firepower to level a city, and Narumi leads the charge using a giant bayonet and a tuned retina that lets him see in 4K. The captain dissects the monster with the ease of someone cutting butter, proving to Kikoru that you can be a filthy otaku and humanity's most lethal weapon at the same time. Shortly after, that dysfunctional family reunion happens with directors Shinomiya and Kafka. The offer is simple. Either the protagonist becomes a pet biological weapon for the 1st Division, or he becomes a t-shirt print with a bullet in his head. Warned that any slip-up results in summary execution, Kafka swallows his pride to fulfill the simp promise he made to Mina. He accepts being the tool of destruction in the gamer captain's hands, ready to fight for humanity even with a monster living inside him.
Kafka Hibino, reporting in. I am ready to serve.
We return to Kafka, this 32-year-old geriatric trying desperately to keep up with the young folks full of collagen and dreams, especially the prodigy Kikoru, while he's coughing up a lung during morning training, desperately trying not to get fired for incompetence. Gen begs Kikoru for a loan after his paycheck mysteriously vanishes, only to be rejected so harshly and flatly it hurt even my empty wallet. But before he can cry it out in the shower, duty calls. A massive horde of ant kaiju erupts on the streets of Shinagawa, and the 1st Division mobilizes. Narumi orders full priority on civilian safety. He then rescues 2 children, deleting the monster effortlessly and reminding the cadet that good intentions don't give XP, only results matter. While Kikoru and the rest of the daycare destroy their targets, Narumi realizes the ants are playing in a coordinated fashion, exhibiting abnormal intelligence. The situation goes south when the humanoid mushroom Kaiju number 9 appears on the battlefield, emitting a 5G signal that resurrects the dead ants into tuned, roided-up versions. Kafka is cornered by a giant regenerating ant and tries to let his monster out in a partial transformation, but suffers from terrible performance anxiety, resulting in a failure at the critical moment and a serious injury. Seeing his useless subordinate is about to become fertilizer, Narumi draws his giant bayonet and activates his special eyes, obliterating the buff monster with a single devastating strike and proving the terrifying power of a gaming addict, all while Kaiju number 9 watches from the shadows planning the next troll. Kafka tries to summon his inner monster to face the Kaiju number 9, but suffers from shameful impotence due to fear of hurting his colorful little friends. The one who has to clean up the mess is Kikoru, motivated by the cliché anime trauma of a mother dying in the line of duty, and now she's sworn to protect everyone. Kafka tries to help with the speed of a guy who doesn't last long in bed, but he is also outmatched until Captain Gen Narumi enters the scene holding a colossal bayonet that definitely serves to compensate for the size of something else. Narumi toggles his cheats with his Kaiju number 1, an implanted Kaiju eye that gives him wall hacks and predicts movements by reading brain signals, dismembering the giant without breaking a sweat. But the monster is a toxic player and pulls the massive self-destruct card to take the city to hell with it. Realizing the Defense Force's toy guns are useless against a living nuke, Kafka decides it's time to come out of the freak closet. He gets over his little fear, transforms into Kaiju number 8 in front of the entire audience, and throws a punch so powerful it makes the enemy explode on the spot. After turning the giant mushroom into a salad, Kafka reverts to his disappointing human form and reunites with Kikoru while the troop celebrates, little knowing that a poor man's joy is short-lived. Out of nowhere, a signal for a colossal kaiju pops up inside the HQ's restroom, proving that the security in this place is about as useful as a screen door on a submarine. It's Kaiju number 9, who sprouted up inside with the creepy mission of absorbing the power of Kaiju number 2, which is currently in the hands, and likely other parts, of director Isaol Shinomiya. Realizing things are about to go south, Isaol orders the rookies to run for the hills, and decides to tank the boss alone. He activates the gauntlets made from number 2's corpse and, ignoring the lower back pain typical of the elderly, starts dishing out electric punches and judo throws, proving he's still the most ripped grandpa in the nursing home.
Squadron-style combat technique number 4, Rising Blast! Technique number 1, Barrage Blast!
Meanwhile, Kafka and Captain Narumi sprint desperately toward HQ like two students late for finals. Isaol takes a moment to think about his daughter Kikoru and the future of the organization, which everyone knows is the biggest death flag in anime history, and pushes his body beyond its limits to unleash an energy blast capable of vaporizing anyone. But number 9 uses a cheat code, alters his own biology to withstand the hit, and walks out of the smoke laughing. With his stamina bar depleted and his special move spent, Isaol is finally overpowered. When Narumi finally decides to do his job and smashes through the ceiling to enter the room, he finds the monster already merging with the director in a scene that would look great on questionable websites. Narumi attacks, absolutely pissed off, but the kaiju uses Isaol's own mouth to humiliate him before unleashing a shockwave. Realizing the old man's body is harder to swallow than it looks, number 9 decides digestion will take a while, opens a portal, and bails, leaving Narumi alone amidst the rubble, promising that cliché revenge we've seen 1,000 times before. All hell is breaking loose, but the squad soon realizes they're beating on the wrong beast. The real threat is Kaiju number 9, who arrives dropping the most gruesome revelation possible. He has absorbed the body of the Director General, and to prove he's sadistic on a hardcore level, he literally splits his face open to reveal the old man's eye right in the center of his own. The girl freezes instantly, in total shock. Kafka and Hoshi-na don't let it slide and launch a coordinated attack, straight out of an RPG final boss raid. Kafka pins the monster down with brute strength, while the vice captain turns into a human blender with his blades. But the villain is just too OP. He tanks the damage, blows up the entire city in an apocalyptic sequence, and escapes through portals, declaring that the era of Kaiju has begun. The aftermath is heavy. The director's death is confirmed, followed by a massive funeral. Kikoru is at rock bottom, blaming herself for not being strong enough, but Hoshi-na steps in with that classic shonen mentor speech, promising to train the girl personally to make her stronger than almost everyone else. Meanwhile, Kafka has serious issues. The transformation is taking its toll, and his hand is permanently stuck in monster form. The doctors give it to him straight. If he keeps transforming, he might never return to being human. Even with the risk of him turning into a full-time monster, Hoshi-na keeps him on the team because they need that power, but warns that if Kafka loses control, he will personally have to put down his friend. To catch a breather, Kafka visits the cleanup crew at Monster Sweeper to reminisce about the old days. But the episode closes on a sinister cliffhanger. In a secret facility, Vice Director Keiji authorizes the creation of a weapon made from the remains of Kaiju number 10. The comeback is already being prepared. Vice Captain Hoshi-na decides to pay a personal visit to the remains of Kaiju number 10, who is now basically a chatty fatty head stuck on a spinal cord, looking like a forbidden lollipop from a horror movie. The monster reveals he's nothing but a disposable prototype of number 9, but refuses to give more details unless Hoshina fulfills his bizarre fetish. The kaiju begs to be processed and turned into a long, hard weapon to be handled exclusively by Hoshina, all because he's desperate to feel the violent friction of battle one more time. Even though he's disturbed by this absurd neediness, Hoshina agrees to grip the handle of this tool to guarantee a tactical advantage. Next, the Defense Force leadership gathers to discuss the impending apocalypse. Hoshina explains that the enemy is playing around with tectonic faults, so the strategic geniuses decide the best solution is to rush train the rookies and throw them onto the front lines as surprise cannon fodder. The focus shifts to Numbers Weapon 6, a suit made from the king of the kaiju that has a nasty habit of killing its users, kind of like that toxic relationship you insist on keeping. Captain Ogata reveals that the rookie Reino has a rare compatibility with the thing, and despite warning him that wearing it is suicide, Reino accepts the burden just to get strong enough to protect the useless protagonist. During the test, the weapon sucks his vitality faster than an overdue bill, forcing the kid to tank excruciating pain and visions of hell.
Even just using the arms.
Reino wakes up in the hospital, and Ogata tries to make him quit for the 1000th time, warning that wearing the full suit is basically asking to die. But realizing the kid's self-preservation instinct is non-existent, Ogata caves and gives him a deadline. He has 30 days to master this absurd power, or he's going to end up as a picture on an in-loving memory t-shirt on the battlefield. We find Iharu in a deep existential crisis, realizing he's just an extra in Reino's story. The poor guy flashes back to when he was the supreme nerd at school, only to have his ego shredded after joining the Defense Force and watching Reino surpass him in absolutely everything, including being the protagonist. To make the depression worse, Vice Captain Ogata clears Reino to use Numbers Weapon 6 against a giant mole kaiju, but warns him he only has 10 minutes before the suit turns his body into a human meat popsicle. The battle begins, and Reino tries to channel his inner Elsa from Frozen, but loses control of his ice powers, and nearly freezes the entire neighborhood. Iharu, desperate to prove he's not lacking in the cojones department, metaphorically speaking, throws himself in front to distract the monster. The problem is, his ammo just tickles the kaiju's regenerative skin, proving that hard work without talent is just public humiliation. Seeing that things are going south, Reino decides to throw common sense out the window and forces the suit's synchronization to the max. He freezes the beast's limbs, but the mole decides to cheat and evolves, sprouting defensive spikes.
Ishikawa, status report!
I'm fine.
Ogata realizes that Reino's sheer willpower is making his brain override the safety brakes, tearing his own muscles apart like wet toilet paper. Reino freezes a massive area, but his leg snaps with the crunch of a Dorito, and he hits the ground weeping over his own weakness. Just as Reino is about to become fertilizer, Iharu returns, defying orders, and snaps his friend out of his depressive trance. He refuses to let Frosty do everything alone, and takes the lead to create an opening. Iharu decides to be the suicide bait, while telling Reino to prep a long-range shot, proving that sometimes courageous stupidity is more useful than self-destructive talent. In a mountainous valley, the tension is palpable. Reino, despite his injuries, assumes the sniper position, while Iharu decides it's time to prove his worth, heading straight to the front lines against a gigantic Hanju. Ogata watches from a distance, somewhat skeptical, as Iharu's combat power is more unstable than dial-up internet. It starts at a measly 24%, spikes to 41%, and crashes back down. A total mess. However, the team realizes the kid is a clutch player. When he gets in the zone, his power explodes. Iharu knows he's no shonen anime prodigy, but fueled by sheer grit and spite, he decides to turn the tables. He scales the beast, overheats his suit, ignoring every safety warning, and smashes through the creature's frozen carapace by brute force. Falling back exhausted, he screams for Reino, who lands that perfect sniper shot and neutralizes the threat. While the rookies celebrate with a high five, Ogata is left in a funk. He envies that youthful camaraderie, and is hit with heavy flashbacks of Hikari, who died in the past because he encouraged her to follow her dreams. Despite the trauma, he tells Reino, "Congratulations, you passed the test. Now the future of the nation is on your shoulders. No pressure, right?" Later, Kafka sees on the news that Reino has been chosen to wield number 6 in the fight against Kaiju number 9. The protagonist is shocked and worried until Kikoru gives him a reality check. Stop crying over others and focus on your own grind. That night, Kafka is down in the dumps, feeling that without the power of Kaiju number 8, he is useless. Out of nowhere, Hoshina emerges from the shadows, criticizes Kafka's suicidal fighting style, and drags him to a misty shrine. The mission now is to teach Kafka how to fight as a human, without relying on regeneration hacks. It's time for boot camp. We see our favorite geriatric protagonist getting beaten like a rented mule during physical training with Hoshina, desperately trying not to activate his kaiju powers so the government doesn't turn him into pate. The resident tsundere, Kiko-ru, hands him back his phone, and Kafka freezes, staring at the black screen, more afraid of seeing he's been cancelled by his friends than facing certain death. But when he finally works up the courage, he discovers his inbox is exploding with messages of support, proving that the power of friendship unfortunately still exists in this anime. He calls Reino, who is on a forced vacation in the hospital, and gets a motivational ass-kicking, hearing that the entire squad still sees him as a comrade and not a freak of nature, which causes Kafka to flood the bedroom floor with manly tears.
I'm like the biggest idiot ever.
Meanwhile, Daddy Shinomiya is struggling to stay conscious, feeling like his end is near. The Defense Force bigwigs realize the kaiju are disappearing prematurely, figuring out that Kaiju number 9 is playing 4D chess and building an intelligent army. To combat this, they equip Narumi with Numbers Weapon 1 and give Kiko-ru a new outfit to play with. Back at the base, Kafka stops getting beat up for 5 seconds and earns Hoshina's recognition before heading to the roof for a soap opera moment with Mina. She reminisces about the times he was actually useful and protected her, asserts that she is now a strong, independent woman, but renews her promise to wipe out the enemy by his side. But peace lasts shorter than a politician's promise. In Shinjuku, Kaiju number 15 drops his human disguise and decides to turn the city into an open-air parking lot with massive explosions. The sky darkens as a swarm of giant ants erupts from the ground, signaling that the invasion has begun, and Kafka is going to have to work double shifts if he doesn't want Tokyo to turn into a giant anthill. A wedding should be the happiest day in a couple's life, until a kaiju decides the bride is the main course at the buffet. The bride's father tries to tank the beast and gets crushed, but before the wedding turns into a funeral, Narumi steps in to clean house. But this surprise attack was just foreplay, because all of Japan starts popping off with coordinated disasters, hitting power plants and comm towers like an apocalypse ordered via Amazon Prime, with the defense force wider open than a saloon door, and no one to plug the holes. Kiko-ru equips Numbers Weapon 4 and uses its flight capabilities to reach the combat zone faster than you last in bed. She obliterates a giant kaiju and its minions with absurd violence, proving that nepotism works when you hit just as hard as your late mother.
Number 4 unit organ all green. Activating weapon, go!
On the other side, Vice Captain Hoshina tries to defend the airport using Numbers Weapon 10, which is basically like wearing the skin of a psychopath who won't shut up. The sentient suit argues with him constantly, dropping synchronization to dangerous levels while an orgy of enemies surrounds them. Instead of retreating, Hoshina and his bipolar outfit start trading insults and blows at a frantic pace. They find harmony in shared hatred, and Hoshina slices the pack leader while the suit complains about not being able to fully let loose. But the respite is short-lived, as 6 supermassive kaiju sprout up in Oizumi ready for an unprecedented massacre, forcing Captain Mina to whip out her long, thick gun to face it all head-on. The defense force is there, cleaning up like janitors after a party, when a massive monster shows up, making the ground team look like wacky inflatable tube men. It looks like the end of the line, but Captain Mina decides to enter the chat. There's just one detail: she's 20 kilometers away. No problem at all. She uses a colossal railgun, a stationary weapon that would make any Call of Duty sniper cry with envy, and deletes the kaiju with a single devastating shot, leaving everyone's jaws on the floor. And she doesn't stop there. From her post, she takes down 5 more giants across the city, one by one, like she's playing Duck Hunt on easy mode. It looks like a guaranteed win, but Gen and Hoshina smell a trap. And they're right. Kaiju number 9 appears, revealing that the first attack was just a distraction to gather data. Out of nowhere, geysers erupt across the city and 5 new monsters emerge, all with a fortitude level of 9.0 or higher. The worst part? It's a coordinated attack, 4D chess style. Each new numbered kaiju is focused on a specific officer. Number 11 goes for Narumi, number 13 for Hoshina, and number 15, who looks like a bizarre little girl, goes straight for Kiko-ru. Kiko-ru unleashes an incredible 84% 100% unleashed combat power, absurd for a rookie, but the monster predicts her every move, mocks her by calling her little one, and shatters her shield with brute force. Command realizes the nightmare. These monsters were custom built to hard counter the heroes. Meanwhile, Kafka is helping with the evacuation. A little girl he saves says she trusts the heroes, and that hits him hard, reminding him of the promise he made to Mina. Seeing his leader injured in the widespread chaos, Kafka gets tired of being an NPC. He carries the officer to a safe spot, apologizes for breaking the rules again, and takes the heat. Hidden away, he transforms, and Kaiju number 8 finally joins the server to turn the tides.